Okay, I highly recommend Grim Dawn. This is a game that I have recently tested due to being recommended it consistently. This, as I have said previously, is a game that I see people consistently saying is a great game, then you need to play. However, I never see people live streaming this game or uploading too many videos on this game. So I was rather confused as to what the game actually is, what it has to offer, why I've seen it recommended so often, but yet never see anybody play it. So I played through the entirety of the base game and a little bit of some of the expansions. I just want to share some of my thoughts with you. Okay, first thing I want to mention is the first bit that threw me off a little bit was the graphics. They seem mid, but then very quickly, the midness of the graphics doesn't actually tend to affect you as much when you realize you can actually turn the camera. And this sort of adds another layer of depth to the world as you explore it. So originally I'm like, okay, this is an isometric game with some mid graphics. I wonder why people like it. But then you realize it's actually a fully fledged out map that you can rotate the camera in, which kind of separates it a little bit from some of the other ARPGs. Now, I mentioned the map. It's absolutely massive. This is another thing that separates it. You can see here, I played through all of these areas, and pretty much if I click on any of these areas here, I'm just going to click on a random one, okay? If you click on one of these areas, you're going to notice that just the area I even clicked on is fairly large as well. You can see on the map here, I haven't even explored all of this area. These are basically your waypoints here. Riffs is what they call them. Your character is basically a guy that can riff walk or what have you. And the actual design of the world itself is, well, I'm going to use the word proportional. So often in these games, I find there's something weird in which my character is like as tall as a tree and houses are like 4 characters wide. Or just like it kind of doesn't make sense. In this game, both the blueprint layout of the actual houses you go through, as well as the size of things, the scale of it tends to make a little bit more sense. Like they don't feel like just placeholder images in the game or something like that. It actually feels like a world, is what I'm kind of struggling to explain here. It feels like a world, and it feels like it actually makes sense in terms of the layout of the world as well. Ambience is quite good. The music is quite good. The actual map itself has variety. So you have like a sand area, a forest area, a cavern area. Like you're going to have some variety in terms of areas you can actually explore. And because, again, you can rotate the camera, it's actually fully fleshed out. So there's no like you walk into a wall, but it's only designed from one side of it because, you know, it's isometric. Like they had to actually build the entirety of the world. And I think that that actually adds quite a bit of a layer to it here. You can see I'm using like a disease skill that's spreading and killing things around. We'll talk about the skill system and progression here in just a moment. I just want to give you the first impression of kind of the beauty of the world, because at first you might look at the game and think the graphics don't look that great, but once you get out into the world, that starts to melt away and it starts to be a lot more appealing. So that's the first thing I want to mention. Something else you're going to notice is they actually use the full color palette available. It is a world, it is a planet, and all of the colors that you would expect in a full vibrant world are here. It's green when it's a green lush area, it's blue when it's water, it's darker when it's in the cave, and it's monochromatic if they're trying to get a lifeless expression across. So you're not actually going to be just seeing the one same color. Your character is bright as well, the gear is bright. You actually get to see some vivid imagery. So in terms of graphics, the world, all of that, it doesn't seem when you're looking at the Steam store like it's quite good, but once you actually get into the game, it's definitely at a minimum acceptable, and I would say borderline pretty decent looking from a color palette, a proportionality design aspect, and also just the world itself is fairly appealing once you get into it. The inventory system is pretty standard. The UI is standard to mid, if I'm being honest. However, the skill system is quite good in this game. So basically how this works is there is both a gigantic, what they call a devotion tree, in which you're kind of picking and mix and matching different passives here, as well as a class system in which you pick 2 different classes and mix them together. They have a number of classes. I picked the Occultist and Oathkeeper, but they have a wide variety of them, like all the way from like mage type of stuff to a guy who uses guns to your standard necromancer stuff. I mean, they have a lot of the classes you would expect and a lot of the ones you would not expect. But what's cool is when you pair 2 classes together, like Oathkeeper and Occultist, for instance, you actually become a different class, which for me is a Sentinel when I pair both of those together. So there's actually a pretty wide variety in terms of options you can do. And the skills here, you can pick through your skill tree, decide what skills you really want to invest in, and then pair those with your devotions, which I'll talk about in just a second. So for me, for instance, I liked the disease spreading aspect. At first, I was like, I want to be an armor guy with a shield. So I started with a shield, and then I really liked the poison. So I thought, what if I am a shield type of guy who's like super tanky as I can get, but then also spreads disease, and I sort of win by a battle of attrition. So I was just kind of picking through and figuring out a style and a theme of a character that I really wanted to do. And you can really do that in this game. So the class system is actually decent. Like, it's one of the better ones I've seen in an ARPG. Now, the devotion system is kind of crazy. Basically, there's all these different constellations. There's a prerequisite to be able to go into each one of these constellations, depending upon how many of these affinity points you get. You get these affinity points as you start to spec into other constellations. So you're unlocking things as you go, depending upon what you pick. And these are going to give you different bonuses that you can tie with your ability. So let me actually show you a visual representation of what this looks like. Here we go. So I spread the disease spread, and you can see I shoot these little fangs out as well, which is from my devotion. The devotion that I picked for that is this bat here, twin fangs. Vampiric fangs assault your foes and sap them of their vitality. So I sort of have like a leech that procs off of my dot. So you can mix and match the devotion passives with your actual skills, and then you can mix and match the classes themselves. So it actually has a fair amount of depth to it, and is fairly customizable. Something else that surprised me is the voice acting in this game. It's basically fully voice acted.
Finding my father. Though the nightmare isn't over yet, I feel that at least we can breathe easier among the Black Legion.
And I actually think the voice acting is like fairly solid throughout the game. I'm normally not like a lore Andy, and I find myself not caring too much and just kind of spam, skipping through things in most games. But I actually listened to quite a bit of this because I was like, oh, the voice acting is quite good. So I can kind of listen to it like a movie and not just have to sit here and read it. And the story's pretty decent. I'm not going to spoil anything in this video for you, but the story's not bad. If you're someone who actually likes that type of thing, it's definitely worth a listen. Okay, let's talk about itemization. So basically, itemization in this game goes down the route of being like decently complicated. So it's not a dumbed down simple RPG. It actually has some depth in terms of itemization. If you look at the way it works, you have everything from damage percentages to resistances to cooldowns to plus the skills, and also damage conversions. You're going to see like I'm converting acid damage to vitality damage, for instance. So you have a full range of complexity in terms of how items actually work. It's not the most in-depth in itemizations I've ever seen, but it's definitely not on the shallow end of itemization as well. You have attributes. When you level up, you can place physique, cunning, and spirit, which are going to give you bonuses. You see in physique here's health regen. In cunning, I'm going to get, physical damage, pierce, and duration. And then spirit, I'm going to get more on the magical sides of things, depending upon, what abilities we're using. It's going to scale depending upon which attribute we level. Now, the campaign's going to start you out in town and slowly send you out to conquer quests and help out the town and save some people as you go through. But occasionally, you're going to run into zones that are sort of like a dangerous area, an optional extra challenge area, which can be quite fun to conquer, which will have suitable rewards for their difficulty as well. Now, in terms of difficulty, there are multiple difficulties. There's normal, there's veteran. You can get like a check mark, which gives you a little bit more extra difficulty. I was playing a veteran because I thought it'd be more entertaining for when I was playing this live. There's elite and ultimate as well, so you can continue to play through it as your character progresses, or if you need a harder challenge. Now, from what I hear, it's important to note that the community itself actually does seasonal content. So while there is no seasonal content in the game itself, they don't do resets. It's just a game and you play through the expansions. There is a community that does community-based seasons that you can play through if you choose to. And while the game is currently $25, it goes on sale quite often. I think I picked this up for like $5. There is a significant amount of DLC that adds on a lot of gameplay in terms of expansions. I played through the base and some of the DLC and quite quickly realized it would take a large amount of time to play through all of them. This game definitely has single player, like Baldur's Gate, Divinity, Original Sin type of vibes. For me, it felt more like an adventure I was going on as opposed to an MMORPG that I am playing. So if you're the type of person that enjoys those style of games, I do highly recommend this. On top of if you're an ARPG like mega enjoyer, you've played Last Epoch, Path of Exile, you're looking forward to Path of Exile 2, you played the Diablo series. Yeah, this one's probably one to add to the list. I was surprised with how much I actually enjoyed this. I was surprised with the depth. I was surprised at when I originally looked at the graphics in the Steam page. I'm like, this doesn't look that good. But then you play it and the graphics actually feel pretty good. And the world has a fairly unique design and the camera angles I love. So actually, I'm pretty positive about this one. I'll be honest. I do highly recommend it. Maybe if you're on the edge, wait for a sale. Because like I said, it does seem to go on sale quite often, and pick it up on sale. That is just my personal recommendation. But for me, I would give this like a 9 out of 10. I'd actually give this a pretty high rating in my opinion because my expectations weren't too high. I just thought it would be a fun ARPG to play. I think it's consumable by nature, so I don't think this is the type of ARPG in which you play it for thousands and thousands of hours. Maybe there's some people that do that, but I don't think that's really most people. I think it's a game you pick up, you play through, maybe you play through the expansions, maybe you come back at a later date to try it out again, but you kind of consume the game, you feel good about your purchase, and then you move on to something else. And honestly, I think that's something that's maybe missing a little bit in game mentality these days. It's okay to pick up a game, buy it, consume it, and be done with it. And I think Grim Dawn does that quite excellently. That's just my opinion. Very positive about this one. Have a wonderful day.